Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamulatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamulatira Vanachari Yamulatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Srila Prabhupada Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivirajikatari Astatara Satnahistavanga Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantagora Vaishavrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Govardhana Ki Jai Shri Shri Krishna Balaram Giriraj Lord Nrsimhadev Ki Jai Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi Hare 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 Bo Hare Krishna Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Excuse me. Hare Krishna everyone and welcome to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. Just 1 second. Yeah, I'll just close it down this way. There's a funny orange pink thing on there. I don't know what that is. You can all see the writing? Yeah? Okay. So this morning we are speaking from the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. We're up to chapter 15, which is entitled Description of the Kingdom of God, and we're up to text 18. I wonder why this is... Okay, so this is sort of a long shloka in terms of the lines. So we're going to use the meter that we normally use for Govindam prayers. So it goes like this. Paravatanya Britasara Sachakravaka Datyuhahamsa Shukatitiribarhinamya Kolahalo Viramate Chiramatram Uchcher Bringadipe Harikatam Ivagayamane Paravatanya Britasara Sachakravaka Datyuhahamsa Shukatitiribarhinamya Kolahalo Viramate Chiramatram Uchcher Bringadipe Harikatam Ivagayamane. Okay, I'll do it one last time. Paravatanya Britasara Sachakravaka Datyuhahamsa Shukatitiribarhinamya Kolahalo Viramate Chiramatramutcher Bringadipe Harikatam Ivagayamane. Okay, somebody like to lead, please? Paravatanya Britasara Sachakravaka Datuyahamsa Shukatitiribarhinamya Kolahalo Viramate Chiramatramutcher Bringadipe Harikatam Ivagayamane. Paravatanya Britasara Sachakravaka Datu hamsa shukatitiri barhinamya. Kola halo viramate chiramatra mucher. Bringadipe harikatam ivagayamane. One of the ladies would like to have a go? Paravatam nabridasara sachakravaka. Datu hahamsa shukatitiri barhinamya. Kola halo viramate chiramatra mucher. Bringadipe harikatam ivagayamane. Thank you very much. Okay. All right, so here we go, word for word translation. Please repeat. Paravata, pigeons. Anyabrita, cuckoo. Sarasa, crane. Chakravaka, chakravaka. Datyuha, galinule. Hamsa, swan. Shuka, parrot. Titiri, partridge. Barhinam, of the peacock. Ya, witch. Kolaha, kolahala, tumult. Viramate, stops. Achiramatram, temporarily. Uchai, loudly. Bringa adipe, king of the bumblebees. Harikatam, the glories of the Lord. Eva, as. Gayamane, while singing. Okay, so here's the translation. When the king of bees hums in a high pitch, singing the glories of the Lord, there is a temporary lull in the noise of the pigeons, the cuckoo, the crane, the chakravaka, the swan, the parrot, the partridge, and the peacock. Such transcendental birds stop their own singing simply to hear the glories of the Lord. Okay, so translation. It's a lovely verse. Translation, please repeat. When the king of bees hums in a high pitch, singing the glories of the Lord, there is a temporary lull in the noise of the pigeon, the cuckoo, the crane, the chakravaka, the swan, the parrot, the partridge, and the peacock. Such transcendental birds stop their own singing simply to hear the glories of the Lord. Okay, and here is Srila Prabhupada's purport. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. This verse reveals the absolute nature of Vaikuntha. There is no difference between the birds there and the human residents. The situation in the spiritual sky is that everything is spiritual and variegated. Spiritual variegatedness means that everything is animate. There is nothing inanimate. Even the trees, the ground, the plants, the flowers, the birds, and the beasts are all on the level of Krishna consciousness. The special feature of Vaikuntha Loka is that there is no question of sense gratification. In the material world, even an ass enjoys his sound vibration. But in the Vaikunthas, such nice birds as the peacock, the chakravaka, and the cuckoo prefer to hear the vibration of the glories of the Lord from the bees. The principle of devotional service, beginning with hearing and chanting, are very prominent in the Vaikuntha world. Om Nagyati Mirandasya Ganandana Shalakara Chakshur Unmalitamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master opened my darkened eyes with a torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. All right, so this very gorgeous verse. So at the start of this chapter, we heard how the words spoken to Lord Brahma by the demigods, they actually denote great concern. Right? So the demigods are appealing to Lord Brahma, and their prayers to him begin with a kind of a glorification of him and his features. Right? The demigods are acknowledging Lord Brahma's position. Right? And they're doing so, in a very sort of honoring and respectful mood. Then they speak what their concern is to him. Right? And we see this in other pastimes also. Right? I just got this image of this particular pastime. This is, of course, when the demigods went to the shores of the ocean of milk to appeal to Lord Vishnu this time. So the demigods headed there, went there, headed by Lord Brahma, and Lord Shiva is also there. And in this particular pastime, the demigods first they're offering prayers of devotion, prayers of worship, and they offer these prayers called Purusha Shukta. Yeah, Purusha Shukta are prayers of bhakti. They are devotional prayers aimed at glorifying the Lord. Then they will state what their particular concern is, right? And in that particular pastime, of course, the demigods were appealing to Lord Vishnu because at that time, which was at the end of last Dwapara Yuga, the earth was being overrun by demoniac kings, right? So this we can say is kind of like the etiquette. It is a standard that is being set by the demigods in appealing to the Supreme Lord for his help. Right? And in today's Srimad Bhagavatam chapter, the demigods are praying to Lord Brahma, and first they are acknowledging his status as their superior, and then they express their grievous concern, which is namely that the entire universe has been plunged into darkness because Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha have been conceived within the womb of Diti, right? And they are getting ready to appear within the world. So, as we read earlier in verse 11 of this chapter, Lord Brahma was pleased with these initial prayers that were offered by the demigods, and so in response to those prayers, Lord Brahma starts to describe the spiritual planets, right? That's where we're up to now, and that is leading to his describing how Jai and Vijay are the gatekeepers of Vaikuntha, and how in fact they had been cursed by the four Kumaras, who are Lord Brahma's own sons. They are known as Manasaputra sons. They are born of the mind of Lord Brahma. And so in this way, Lord Brahma is describing and he is explaining exactly what has happened, and that the demigods are not going to remain in fear. The demigods had become bewildered, so that they will understand what is happening and why it is happening. So, the vast body of demigods, and we know that there are millions of demigods, they do accept Lord Brahma as their authority. And these narrations, which are actually giving a clear description of the Vaikuntha planets, they would certainly have been accepted by the demigods as representing, accurate descriptions of the spiritual planets. Right? As we also hear a little bit further on, right, these descriptions that are given by Lord Brahma which is followed by his statement that to the demigods that this seeming calamity of the universe being plunged into darkness, this is actually all being carried out by the desire of the Supreme Lord, right? Because Krishna is preparing to appear as Lord Nrsimhadev and also as Lord Varahadev. Lord Brahma also tells the demigods that in due course of time, Krishna is going to come and save the situation. He's going to alleviate the earth of the burden of these demons. Right, so giving these descriptions and explanations to the demigods, Lord Brahma was able to appease the demigods. Right, they had become perplexed. Right? At the start of chapter 17 of this canto, we're not quite there yet, but we read how the demigods were freed of all fear upon hearing the cause of the darkness explained by Brahma, and thus they all returned to their respective planets, which would have been the various material planets in the upper material strata, so to speak. So I'm just going to take this off. It's a little bit warm with this. So this is a depiction of the spiritual world. So the spiritual planets, also referred to as the spiritual world, also referred to as the spiritual sky, is also referred to as Vaikuntha. Right? So the word Vaikuntha means without anxiety. Kunta means anxiety, and Vaikuntha means without anxiety. And certainly this word, Vaikuntha, is a very apt description of the spiritual world. In our particular verse today, we are hearing these very lovely descriptions of how some of the resident animals in Vaikuntha, they are responding to the glorification of the Supreme Lord, and they are so stunned by hearing that they are simply ceasing their own activities. So within these Vaikuntha planets, glorification of the Lord is going on all the time. And as Srila Prabhupada confirms in his purport, this glorification can be expressed by any of the living beings in Vaikuntha. Prabhupada writes, there is no difference between the birds there and the human residents, right? Everything is animate, right? So this word animate, actually it's interesting in the, I think animate comes, the English word animate comes from the original Latin word animus. So animus means breath. It actually means spirit or breath in the original Latin. And in English, right, the word animate, we can take this as meaning alive or fully conscious or fully cognizant and able to communicate. Right? So this is the special feature of the residents of Vaikuntha Loka, right, that every single entity there is fully animate. So, we can assume that hearing these wonderful descriptions of the Vaikuntha planets, it must have been very pleasing and also very enlivening for the demigods, because after all, the demigods, they are also materially embodied like we are. Right? They are also residing within the material planets like we are. Right? And actually for any materially embodied being to have the good fortune to hear such narrations coming from an authority like Lord Brahma or any spiritual authority, this is actually very extraordinary, right? It's not ordinary. It should be considered extremely good fortune, right, to be able to listen to these sorts of narrations. And it actually led me to thinking when our own Srila Prabhupada came to us, right, in our era and spoke these wonderful descriptions of the spiritual world, right, who amongst us, right, could ever sort of imagine that we would hear, Prabhu, the Prabhupada disciples were able to hear directly from Srila Prabhupada at that time. And the rest of us now, we have access to these wonderful narrations of the spiritual planets. There actually is no greater fortune or no greater blessing to be able to listen to these sorts of narrations And if the listener, when they are listening to the narrations, if they take those narrations into their heart and they accept them, then it has an instant effect on the listener. It is very purifying, it is very auspicious, and it can also establish faith in the listener, these types of narrations. So also we know that in Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 4, in verse 9, right, Krishna says, Janma karma chame divyam evam yovitti tatvata chaktvadeham puna janma naiti mam etisarjuna. Krishna is saying, one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving this body, take his birth again in this material world, but rather they attain my eternal abode. So he's speaking this to Arjuna. So hearing about Krishna, hearing about his pastimes, hearing about his associates, hearing about his transcendental abode is extremely fortunate for the listener. And so now within the Vaikuntha planets, sorry, I'm a little hot here, the fire is on, I'm going to have to take off my jumper. Sorry. So we've been reading about the Vaikuntha planets, hearing about the Vaikuntha planets, and Krishna's own planet is of course Goloka Vrindavan. So Goloka Vrindavan it's described as the topmost planet within the Vaikunthas, and Goloka Vrindavan has some special qualities that the other spiritual planets do not have, and I'm going to let Srila Prabhupada give this description of the difference, right? So in Canto 3, Chapter 2, Text 20, Srila Prabhupada, in his purport, he writes like this: those whose love of God is awakened to the fullest extent, they go back to the Goloka Vrindavan planet in the spiritual sky. Whereas persons who have just awakened to love of Godhead by accident or association, they are transferred to the Vaikuntha planets, right, in general. Then Prabhupada says, essentially there is no material difference between Goloka and Vaikuntha, right, meaning that there's no sort of factual difference between them. But in the Vaikunthas, the Lord is served in unlimited opulence, whereas in Goloka, the Lord is served in natural affection. So I thought that was a nice explanation there. Today's description in our shloka is we are addressing more the Vaikuntha planets in general. So I want to discuss how all of the various residents of the Vaikuntha planets are glorifying the Lord and his associates. Right? And to do this, I'm actually going to do another reading. So I'm going to read from Krishna book 15 this time, in which Krishna himself is glorifying his older brother Balaram. Right? He is describing how all the various residents of Vrindavan are showing their affection and devotion for Lord Balaram. So this reading is it's a couple of paragraphs, but it's very, very nice. So please bear with me here. Right. So this is it. Krishna then spoke to his elder brother Balaram as follows: my dear brother, you are superior to all of us, and your lotus feet are worshipped by the demigods. Just see how these trees, full with fruits and flowers, have bent down to worship your lotus feet. It appears that they are trying to get out of the darkness that has obligated them to accept the form of trees. Actually, the trees born in the land of Vrindavan are not ordinary living entities. Having held the impersonal point of view in their past lives, they have been put into this stationary condition of life. But now they have the opportunity of seeing you in Vrindavan, and they are praying for further advancement in spiritual life through your personal association. Generally, living entities in the mode of darkness obtain the bodies of trees. The impersonalist philosophers are in that darkness, but they eradicate it by taking full advantage of your presence. I think the drones, right, so drones are, they are not the worker bees, they are sort of, in bee society, they are one level up from the worker bees. So Krishna says, I think the drones that are buzzing around you, Krishna is referring to the bees, must have been your devotees in their past lives. They cannot leave your company because no one can be a better, more affectionate master than you. You are the supreme and original personality of Godhead, and the drones are just trying to spread your glories by chanting at every moment. I think some of them must be great sages, devotees of your lordship, and they are disguising themselves in the form of drones because they are unable to give up your company even for a moment. My dear brother, you are the supreme worshipable Godhead. Just see how the peacocks are dancing before you in great ecstasy. The deer, whose behavior is just like that of the gopis, are welcoming you with the same affection. And the cuckoos who are residing in this forest are welcoming you with their joyful sweet cries, because they consider that your appearance in their home is so auspicious. Even though they are trees and animals, these residents of Vrindavan are glorifying you. They are prepared to welcome you to the best of their ability, as is the practice of great souls in receiving another great soul at home. Right? So I think that's so sweet, and that's coming from Krishna's own words there. That's in Krishna book. So in this excerpt, right, Krishna is finishing by saying that the various living beings, they are in fact great souls, right? And they are welcoming Lord Balaram, the Supreme Soul, right, into their own forest home. Right? So the creatures mentioned in today's shloka, they are all very endearing, of course, right? Both the bumblebees and the birds. Actually, in Sweden, where I was born, there are many, many bumblebees, right? And they're quite large, and you can actually hear them buzzing around on the flowers and in the grass, and people will actually pick them up in their hands. They're very charming, and when the bumblebees are there, everyone really appreciates them because they're just very lovely to have around, and generally they don't sting. They don't harm anyone. And in today's verse, right, the Sanskrit word for bumblebee, if we translate it verbatim, it translates into the king or the master of the bees. Right, this is Bringa Adipe in today's verse. So the bumblebee is not considered an ordinary bee. And then we read how the bumblebee is doing Harikatam. Right, so we know in ISKCON we say Krishna Katha, right? We should not speak Prajalpa. Prajalpa is mundane talk. We should speak Krishna Katha. We should speak about Krishna, glorify Krishna. So Hari is one of the names of Krishna, so Hari Katham. It's the same as Krishna Katha. So apparently, Krishna Katha is the language of the bumblebees in Vaikuntha. Right? And, we mustn't make the mistake of thinking that human beings are the only creatures who are innately spiritual by nature, and that we are the only ones who have the capacity to maintain a loving relationship with Krishna. Essentially, all living beings are of this nature. Throughout our Shastras, also, we have many examples of devotees who appear in what we would normally call animal forms, right? For example, we have Gajendra, right, the king of the elephants. Of course, Gajendra in his previous life was King Indrajumna, and he was cursed to take birth as an elephant. I think that was the curse. So he appeared as Gajendra, king of the elephants. We also hear of Hanuman. Of course, Hanuman is a Vanara. Right, the Vanaras are generally described as monkeys, but actually they're a little bit different because the Vanara race is said to be a highly cultured, and intelligent sort of race of beings. We also hear of Garuda. Right, Garuda is, of course, Lord Vishnu's carrier eagle. He's the king of the birds, or the king of the eagles. Right, and all of these various devotees, right, they are offering their devotion to Krishna unstintingly. And of course, we also know this pastime when Lord Caitanya was wandering through the forests of Jarikanda. Not only was he able to inspire all these living beings to chant Hare Krishna, but he also inspired them to become friends with each other. I think it's shown in this particular depiction, we have the deer is kissing the tiger and so forth. Also I wanted to mention that, even within our own time today, we have some examples or cases of animals displaying what appears to be devotion, right? And I mean, we are not actually in any position to judge whether they are or not. Some years back, I think it was about 25 years ago, His Holiness Janananda Maharaj actually compiled a book. You can see the book cover there on the right. This is by Janananda Maharaj. So Maharaj had sent out, an invitation for devotees to submit stories, like real-life stories of when animals are actually showing what appears to be, devotion, or they are somehow engaging in activities that are devotional activities. So I thought I'd tell just one of those. It's just a short one. This one was actually told by His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj, right? But then probably one of his servants submitted that to the book. So the story goes like this, that in Mayapur, going back some time, there used to be a dog. Excuse me. 1 second. There used to be a dog who would sneak into the temple at the end of the day after everyone had vacated the temple. I don't know exactly where in the Maya complex, which particular Vyasasana this is, because Prabhupada is manifest there in various buildings. But anyway, he would sneak in and he would do dandavats. Right? The dog would do dandavats in front of Srila Prabhupada, and then he would go out again. And apparently this happened every evening. So the devotee that submitted this story to Janananda Maharaj's book, he thought, I'm going to have to check this out for myself. So he went into the temple building and he hid himself, right? And he waited at the end of the day. And sure enough, the dog came in, paid dandavats in front of Srila Prabhupada, and then went out again. Right? And I want to also tell another pastime, and this is one that I witnessed myself. This was in 2022, right, 2 years ago in Vrindavan. So I was there for a few months, and I decided to join the Sunday evening Harinam. It's headed up by that Russian devotee who is he's a pujari for Srila Prabhupada in Prabhupada's Samadhi, and he plays the accordion. I don't know if any of you know him, but anyway, so he was organizing this Harinam for outside the back gate of our Krishna Balaram Mandir complex in that laneway. So 7 o'clock every Sunday, he's probably still doing it now, I went to join the devotees there, and that particular devotee, so he was mic'd, right? He had a microphone, and he had put a speaker about 20 feet away from him, and everyone else was not mic'd, but he would sing and then we would respond like we do in Harinam, and we were dancing around. Now every single Sunday there was a dog that would come and actually join the Harinam party, right? He was, probably about the size of a Kelpie, Australian Kelpie dog, and he would, sometimes he would just be standing amongst us, and he would literally be singing, as good as a dog can sing, they're sort of howling. And he was very excited about this. And then one time I saw that this dog, he walked away from the Harinam party, and he went up to the speaker, and he hid behind the speaker, and he was still singing away, right, in response to the Maha Mantra. So in other words, this dog wasn't just, jumping around us just for the sake of it. He was actually responding to the singing. So I thought this was very wonderful. But returning to our shloka today, right, so I actually found images of all of the birds here that are listed in today's shloka, and I've put them in there in sequence as they appear within today's shloka, right, starting with the pigeon at the top. Now, if we look at all these birds, right, we can see that they are extraordinarily beautiful birds, right? We also know that these birds, either they are extraordinary good singers, they have wonderful songs that they sing, or they will make some sort of sounds that are very captivating to the ear, right? And so the Prabhupada describes these birds as transcendental, right? And also, right, a number of times, Srila Prabhupada describes different types of birds when he is describing, or when he wants to make reference to different types of human beings. I think this is very interesting. So I'm going to read you just a short thing. This is from first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada says like this. He says, crows and swans are not birds of the same feather because of their different mental attitudes. The fruitive workers or passionate men are compared to the crows, whereas the all-perfect saintly persons are compared to the swans. The crows take pleasure in a place where garbage is thrown out, just as the passionate fruitive workers take pleasure in wine and women and places for gross sense pleasure. The swans do not take pleasure in the places where crows are assembled for conferences and meetings. They are instead seen in the atmosphere of natural scenic beauty, where there are transparent reservoirs of water nicely decorated with stems of lotus flowers in variegated colors of natural beauty. That is the difference between the two classes of birds. I thought that was very interesting. I've heard that. You've heard that, Prabhu? Yeah, a few times Prabhupada, makes this distinction between the birds when he's actually, he's talking about the human beings. And so, all these birds that are listed in today's shloka, certainly we can describe them as being in the mode of goodness, right? They are appearing within the Vaikuntha planets. Even though their own songs and even though their own appearance is quite magnanimous, still they will just stop their activities to hear the glories of the Lord. In this case, recited by the bumblebees. But as Srila Prabhupada says, glorification of the Lord is going on all the time in Vaikuntha Loka, and really any living being can express such glorification. So, okay, so I think I'll stop there and just thank everyone for listening. I was wondering if anyone would like to add a comment or ask a question. Yeah, we have the microphone.
Thank you for the class, Padma. I'd just like to share a story or something recently happened in the Krishna Pad. There was a few of us there actually. Yeah. There was just this praying mantis. We offer food. There's like an area where there's a picture of Krishna and Jagannath and this god all
in the kitchen or
in the kitchen.
In the kitchen, yeah.
And we all offer our food there and do the prayers. And one day there was just this praying mantis, and it was just like staring at the picture, just like swinging back and forth like this. And I was just about to offer my food, and as I come over, it just kind of bows down right in front of the picture, and it's like,
I'm getting goosebumps.
It was so kind of, I can't see any coincidence in that.
No, there isn't. Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, it's I think as you're saying, if we look at this from the spiritual perspective, we can't just say that that praying mantis just happened to be there and happened to do that. No, there's more. I firmly believe there's more going on. Yeah.
So then I had a question, because I've heard before that it depends on our consciousness. We can be in the spiritual world right here. So then what does that mean in respect to the animals that are here?
Yeah. Also? So it's difficult to ascertain exactly what the consciousness of another living being is, even at the best of times. Generally, when it comes to humans, we can except that if an individual is ongoingly, like our devotees are here, and people who are coming to the temple and they're engaging in the process, we can accept that, their consciousness is being purified and they are on a devotional path. But I think when we have odd incidences, which can happen, like for example, your praying mantis, or even like I think in the Harinam van a couple of weeks ago, we were discussing odd incidences, where a human being who is not ordinarily connected with Krishna consciousness, it was you, Prabhu. Last Sunday, right? You were leading the Harinam, right? And remember, you led the Harinam party in Byron Bay to the front of that backpackers lodge, and there was one man there who he just loved hearing the music, right? Or the mantra, I suppose. He was enlivened, probably a combination, and he came out with his girlfriend and they were dancing and we were standing there in the Harinam party, and then you actually put the microphone to his mouth and he actually led the mantra to the best of his ability, right? So I think we can probably assume that individual has not, he's not a practicing devotee because he didn't quite know the Mahamantra, but because he was so excited about it, at one point he actually led the kirtan just momentarily. So, in cases like that, and in cases like your praying mantis, I would say that there is something, also in those individuals' past, that they should receive this extremely good fortune, to engage in some devotional activity, and thereby doing, they take a huge leap forward, in their spiritual life. So, I can't comment exactly what their consciousness is, but I can confidently say that it's not by accident that those particular individuals got the opportunity to do that service. That praying mantis, that's actually service. He's bowing down in front of the Lord. Yeah. I don't know if I've really responded to your question, but okay, we have another question here.
There was a story that I read. I think it was a Jataka story. There's lots of books about it, and it was about a jackal, a white jackal.
Okay, so you have to speak a little bit louder. Yeah, speak a little bit louder. Yeah.
And all the other jackals, what's he doing?
Yeah. So just hold the microphone like that. Yeah, that's it.
Then all the other forest animals were glorifying him, and
who were they glorifying? Krishna?
I don't know. I can't remember the story.
Oh yeah.
Well.
So when did this happen?
Maybe when Krishna was alive.
Oh yeah. So there were devotees glorifying Krishna.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Isn't that wonderful? And where did you hear that story?
Do you know Caritamrita? You know that?
I can't quite hear. Did you hear Ramprasad Prabhu?
I think it's Caritamrita, something like that.
Well, I don't know if I'm familiar with that one, but thank you so much for sharing that with us. Yeah, it's always wonderful to hear, when devotees are glorifying the Lord in different situations. Yeah. Okay, we have one more from Ramprasad. Would you like to give him the microphone? Yeah.
Do you remember, I don't know if you were around then, we used to have a dog here on the farm called Hari Ram, remember him?
He was here before me.
Oh.
I came just after him. Yeah. Please tell the story.
Well, Hari Ram was a Kelpie.
Right.
And the devotees would paint tilak on him, so he always looked like it because the paint would just stay in his fur. But he would come up to you, like you'd say hello to him or something like that. He would pick up a straw and put it in his mouth.
Wow.
And then he would crawl along, like on his belly towards you.
Wow.
And then you could give him a pat.
Isn't that wonderful?
It's so amazing.
I also heard one story about Hari Ram, that was his name, yeah. One time, apparently Hari Ram, like he knew he wasn't allowed into the temple room, is that right? He used to sit at the door. But one time we had the Govardhana Puja festival inside the temple. Sometimes if it's raining, we've had it inside the temple, and we put the hill made of sweets, on the table, and the devotees will circumambulate. I don't know where we do it these days. Are we having it in the temple at the present? Yeah. Yeah, so anyway, one time apparently... Oh, we have it outside too. Yeah, that's right. So one time Hari Ram, or Hari Rama, it was during the Govardhana Puja festival, and he was sitting outside the door as usual, but he knew he wasn't allowed in. But then very quickly during this festival, right, all the devotees are going around the hill, circumambulating. He raced in, circumambulated the hill once, and then raced out again. So, yeah, that's... And I just wanted to say what Prabhu was saying about, Hari Ram taking a straw between his teeth and paying obeisances. So that behavior is listed in our Shastra. That's, that is... denotes, humility. It shows how humble an individual is when they want to show, they want to place themselves really at the lotus feet of the devotees. Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing that, Prabhu. Yeah. Okay, well, I think this has probably been, one of the most wonderful Srimad Bhagavatam verses I've spoken on. Sometimes the topics are a little challenging, but this one is just so sweet. Yeah, so thank you everyone for attending today. Jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.